Good afternoon. Let me, in the first place, express my gratitude to the ICD and to Mark to invite me again. This is the fourth time that I have the privilege to speak to this distinguished audience of the ICD, either directly or through a video conference. In the previous talks, I have been proposing permanently that biology should be a new tool for a new world order. So that reveals clearly what my position is. My position is that all human beings should support life. First thing that I want you to remember, life. Our mission, then, is to provoke unity, to provoke life. Unity and life. To benefit who? Who will be the beneficiary of this? Only the people, the ecosystems, the world, the planet. Just life? No. Life is not an static fact. Life is a process. Being a process, you cannot talk only to preserve life, because if you preserve an static fact, it will destroy itself. If we're talking about a process, we need to understand that we need to keep the process going on. So when we talk about the life, we talk a better life. That is the first message I'm going to give it to you. And I want to invite you that what ICD has developed a beautiful program which they call Understanding Ecuador, that we're going to present it Friday evening. And I wish that all of you will be present in that evening that one do this reception in honor to my country, Ecuador, and you will understand it pretty much better than now. And also, I'm going to give you some homework. So I'm going to make some polemic, some questions, some contradictions that I'm going to mention this afternoon. So we may discuss about that next Friday. Probably I'm going to ask 3 or 4 volunteers that who may talk next Friday. Next, please. Next. The Westphalia system emerged from the peace treaty of Westphalia, signed the year 1648 by the representative of the major European countries. This treaty prepared the rules for modern international relations. With peace as a goal, Westphalia's system is sustained on these 3 key principles to it: sovereignty of states and the fundamental rights of political self-determination, legal equality between states, and non-intervention of one state in the internal affairs of any other state. It is well known that the enforcement of these 3 principles has historically been a farce. Nevertheless, they continue to be considered a paradigm under which international relations are carried out today. I contend that the original sin of the international system is to consider peace above life itself as the main goal of the effort of humanity, when peace itself dwarfs in the presence of precious life. The fiery nationalism of the 19th century reinforced Westphalian concept of nation. The state-nation is compounded of groups that share the same language, cultures, religion, ancestry, history. Although the world barely homes 200 states, including the very few non-members of the United Nations, there are around 2,000 nationalities in the world. Very few states enjoy a pure nationality without the influence of more than one ancestry like Japan. And yet, there are independent clusters of nationalities spread out several states and nations. Ecuador, for example, hosts 14 Aboriginal nationalities, besides other ethnic groups such as mestizos, whites, and Afro-Ecuadorian. The globalized world of today contradicts the concept of Westphalian supremacy. Can a small country like Ecuador display a cosmopolitan nation brand? Can a small, multinational, profusely ethnically diverse country like Ecuador display a sophisticated nation branding that represents the imaginary of its unique community? Is it possible for this young and small country to compete with the nation's branding of countries with a strong ancestry that have molded the Occidental and Oriental civilization? Can we compete against the giants of globalization, the McDonald's, the Occidental petroleum companies of the world, the IBM, Bill Gates? How can we stand to face pockets larger than the budget of many countries together? My answer is an absolute and loud yes. Ecuador itself is a global symbol. A symbol of science, a symbol of life, a nest of human knowledge and biodiversity. A dozen countries are divided by the equator, but only one is privileged to carry its name. The reasons are geographical, planetary, scientific, and historical. Around the year 1736, the Academy of Sciences of Paris, following the studies of Sir Isaac Newton, Cassini, Picard, Colbert, Merchaud, Delambre, Snellius, Clairaut, and others, decided to establish the dimension of the planet from what was considered during centuries of navigation the zero parallel. For this task, a scientific delegation was put together that was to measure using the Spanish colonies of South America as a starting point. The recommendation to do so was presented by our scholar, Dr. Pedro Vicente Maldonado, who explained at that time the geographical assets of the Virreinato de Quito, as it was known at that time. From these measurements, they established that the Earth was wider in the equator and flattened at the poles. Since this moment on, the territory around Quito is known the land of equator. This is, without any doubt, a nation branding. But the scientific achievement do not end with that geodesic mission. Its prestige in Europe and in the world was acquired by subsequent studies made in Ecuador. Charles Darwin reached the heights of his journey in the Beagle when he arrives to the islands of the Galapagos archipelago, where he transformed human knowledge with his evolution of the species. Alexander von Humboldt, explorer and scientist, upgraded Ecuadorian lands with the observation published in his books, Personal Narrative of Travels to the Equinoctial Region of the New Continent, Consideration of Nature, Cosmos, and Physical Description of the World. Humboldt made studies on plants, animal life, geology, and archaeology of the region. He called attention to the cold water, to the cold current water that modifies the climate along the South American coastal region. This current today bears his name. It is an emblem of life and can be considered as another nation branding. But his legacy, the legacy of Humboldt, is social and political also. He left maps with vast geographical knowledge to his friends. These friends were the freedom fighters of the independence. Simón Bolívar, historical documents, the Jamaica letter, is composed of many demographical distribution given by Humboldt. Humboldt, a daring adventurer, tried to conquer the Chimborazo, a 6,130 meters high mountain, and almost made it. He reached 5,900, and he called it the roof of the world. Simón Bolívar, in the very same place, composed his beautiful poem, Delirio sobre el Chimborazo. If all of this was a nation branding for La Condamine, for Darwin, and for Humboldt, it must still be good enough nation branding for whoever wants to follow their footsteps. Ecuador could very well be the greenish blue emblem of life, like a sapphire emerald mounted in the equinoctial ring of the planet. Ecuador is one of the 17 countries where the largest biological diversity is concentrated in just 0.70% of the surface of the world, and receive 1 more hour of the sun all year. Ecuador has 4 well-differentiated regions with an impressive wide spectrum of microclimates, from which thousands of different species and plants and animals are born. Ecuador has 10% of the plants of the planet, 8% of the animals, 18% of the birds, 11% of the animal species. Ecuador has 3,800 species of vertebrates, 1,550 mammals, 350 reptiles, 375 amphibians, 800 freshwater fish, 450 saltwater fish, 1,000 insects, 4,500 butterflies. The 2 mountain chains of the Cordillera of the Andes cross Ecuador north to south, dividing the continental territory of Ecuador in 3 regions: the Amazonian jungle, the high interandean lands, and the Pacific coast. 1,000 kilometers from the coast, there is our 4th region, the Galapagos Islands, or Archipelago de Colón. In Ecuador exists 46 46 ecological systems in perfect cohabitation, biotic, abiotic. Biologically, they represent the best reserve to regenerate the life of a planet harmed by deforestation, global warming, and ecological damage. These 46 ecological systems are influenced by altitude, the additional hour of the sun, its geography, temperature, winds, and the sea currents. The higher ecological system is the paramo, a high barren plateau in the Andes between 3,600 and 5,000 meters of altitude. The paramo, is unique of the Andes and does not exist in the Alps or any other mountainous region of the world. Because the volcanoes of the sun receive the sun in many different ways, they produce different microclimates. The sun descends to the bottom of the valleys between 3,000 to 2,000 meters of altitude. At the height above the superior blue frontier, the condor rides, and also adorn our national emblem. But the condor is one of the birds in danger of extinction. The deforestation and the disorderly human settlement have not yet destroyed so much beauty, because that is precisely the secret of the ecological systems. Biological diversity not only signifies abundance and different form of life, but the perfect harmony of biological species with the other species and with the abiotic scenario. I would like to think that this principle and process of biodiversity between its components to preserve life inspired Alejandro Dumas' viral commitment of the Musketeers of the King. One for all and all for one. A nation branded that Ecuador needs should have that vital force to agglutinate every Ecuadorian, like if they could be just one man fighting in defense of their ecosystems, which means in defense of life, which means in defense of the planet. A nation branding of Ecuador must have the strength of that slogan to unite every Ecuadorian in defense of the ecological system with a strong conviction of life defense. The protection of the ecological systems works so effectively that in spite of the predatory action, it's been calculated that only in the northwest region of the Andes still exists more than 10,000 species in perfect harmony. When you descend upon the external flanks of both of the mountainous Cordillera chains, the traveler finds magical forest hidden by dense clouds, white clouds, followed by tropical rainforests, whether you descend toward the Amazonian Delta or to the Pacific coast. These steep terrains, with a range in altitude between 3,000 and 1,000 meters, are very rich in new species of orchids and bromeliads. The Amazon Delta is covered by tropical rainforests with large leafy trees home to more species of animals and plants than in any ecosystem in the world. It is a green paradise which is threatened by oil exploitation and mining. Yasuni is an Amazonian territory of nearly 10,000 square kilometers, which still remains pristine and shelters the most diverse treasure of the world. In a paradise flooded by trees, vines, and plants, live 567 species of birds, 105 varieties of vertebrates, and 83 varieties of reptiles. In 1 hectare alone, there are 644 types of trees and 10,000 and 100,000 types of insects. But also, under this paradise lies my country's greatest oil wealth. If this felt or Block 43 were to be exploited, it would begin the destruction of nature's gem and the emission of nearly 500,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, contributing to global warming and the destruction of the planet. Of course, its exploitation will bring significant financial resources to meet unmet needs. But the instinct of survival and respect for human life compel us not to do so. I hope, I'm pretty sure, our government will not do it. And powerful countries support this view of defending life. Descending into the Pacific coast, there is also an area of tropical rainforest in the north, in the province of Esmeraldas, which today is being dangerously deforested. Traveling south the Pacific coast, the traveler enters much drier regions. Rains half of the year dry. Once it was completely covered by large areas of dry forest, which now have been reduced by large human settlements and agriculture. A major work of dams and canals has returned his greenery. The two seasons are influenced by the two currents, the cold Humboldt current and the warm current of El Niño. The first rises from the surface of Antarctic, crosses the coast of Chile, Peru, and Ecuador, giving countries rich ecology, but the slow evaporation creates desert areas in Peru and Chile. Ecuador has the advantage of El Niño current that moves Humboldt current into deeper areas, producing precipitation and vegetation half of the year in the coast of Ecuador. The Galapagos Islands, or Columbus Archipelago, formed 8 million years ago, 1,000 miles from the mainland Ecuador, as a result of volcanic eruption on the seabed. It consists of 13 large islands, 6 small, and 107 islets and rocks. Some islands are still in the process of formation, and volcanic activity is recorded. The islands have a variety of ecological species that are the foundation of the Charles Darwin theory of evolution. This immense variety is unique in the world and is known by tourists as the Enchanted Island. In 1959, it was declared a national park, and in 1979, UNESCO declared a World Heritage Site. In my opinion, the Galapagos Island, and like the whole Ecuador, should be declared a biogeographical reserve of humanity. Galapagos is also known as a sanctuary of whales and dolphins. The truth is that the whole Ecuadorian coast is a whale sanctuary. In June, they come from the south to make love along the equatorial coast. My greatest personal joy every Saturday from June to October is attending this erotic dance of dolphins and whales out of the coast of the Valdivia culture, which has a goddess of fertility and considers acts of love a divine expression of the living condition. Whales are not mistaken. Not our people, neither nature, neither God. But world leaders may be grown. I have presented what Ecuador is as a citizen who loves his country. But it was the president, and I'm a scientist, I'm a physician. And I should present to you, as a statesman, as a scientist, possible perspective to the world today looking into the future. In some of my previous lectures, I told you that the study of cultures not only looks back, and that biology is a time machine that allows us to obtain genetic information on where we're coming from and where we're going to. The mathematical genius, creator of Alice in Wonderland, wrote, "It's a poor memory which only works backwards." Arnold Toynbee wrote, "Countries have different characters, such as human beings, which means they have genetic fingerprints, pluripotent, like stem cells, that will allow us to recognize the possibilities of what can be and what can be done. What the stem cells of the world convert into will depend on globalization. Nation branding in that globalization requires a minimum analysis of global geopolitics. Westphalian sovereignty, based on self-determination of the people and the colonization process, produced a political fragmentation and proliferation of countries with their own seat in the UN. In just half a century, we have become to be close to 200. Nevertheless, in this era of postmodern globalization, only three empires dominate the global geopolitics: European Union, US, and China. Post-war decolonization changed the empires, but did not destroy the imperialism as an institution. The proof is that they continue distributing the rest of the other countries like a monopoly board game and face each other in fratricidal wars. The imperialist phenotype intellectual's imitation do not allow the world to find smarter ways of living together. But unipolarity in the world is not only military. There are different diplomatic styles that must be recognized properly for a small country to advance. From that recondite point, we face three imperial styles in frank competition for world domination. The US coalition, which is necessary to obey. The European consensus, which will be adhered as a business consortium, and the Chinese consultative style inherited from Confucius, seeking alliances around easy points of agreements and bypassing difficult issues. These three powers represent the first world of today, integrated by 30 OECD countries. The second world was the socialist countries of the Cold War, later post-communist countries, and continues to grow in number and differences. They aspire to forge a polycentric world. Russia, Japan, India, and some Islamic nations, without being able to assert itself, develop counter that is capable of awakening or strengthening one of the superpowers. However, there is a lot of schizophrenia in these second world nations. They share features of the first and the third world. They come from both the East and the West, and they may align with whichever of the three powers. Their strategies will depend on this profile, selected symbols, and detected nation brandings. But what is left for our countries and nations of what was the third world? If the geopolitics of the post-war continues to set the paradigms of international relations, globalization will forever repeat global failure because they imposed imperial relations rather than relations among the nations of the world. This overwhelming country brand will be that of the OECD countries. Its ideology is not Marxism, is not capitalism, not even democracy. Its ideology is economical success. The objective of the human relationships is to create friendships, to create links within them. Geopolitics has been making allies to influence them. The second world is the stage where the three world superpowers rehearse their nation branding to influence their allies, light them up, weaken them to the limit of the market, and to compete without competitors. The limit is the level of consumption, because if it decreases under the level, if it decreases under that level, it stops being interested of these world powers. The second world fights to compete and ally itself and pretends to sell face value to its alignment. But a weak country, among the hundreds of whom belong to the third world, usually line up with only one superpower and have to follow it. Only the truth can make people free and wealthy. Our third world countries need an exportable product, an unifying idea that agglutinates their people and attract all of the people of the world. Ecuador, being a poor and a third world country, has that exportable, lavish heritage, and that is its best currency. Life. Better set, better life. That's what we need, a better life, and Ecuador has all of it. I have mentioned to you many truths, but many contradiction things, and I would like that all of you to be present in the celebration of Understanding Ecuador next Friday. Bring those questions. Bring some discussion. Not only agreements. Better bring disagreements with me. Because what is democracy of the world needs? Contradiction, disagreements, because we can produce a new truth formed from every truth of every one of us. That is the real democracy for the future and for all of us. Thank you very much.
Is it okay if we take some questions?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions? Anyone?
It's a personal question. You've been president. Is there anything you would have done differently now that you're no longer president?
No. No. I did what I think I had to do. I took my country that has lost its democratic institution, no Supreme Court of Justice, no money. So I had to form, asking for the help of the international community to form a new Justice Supreme Court, and also had to take the money that some transnational companies were taking from our country, mainly oil companies. I had to take that money back to Ecuador. So I couldn't do everything I could, but what I did was exactly what I need. And let me tell you, I think the government that is acting today is working exactly what the Ecuador needs. I cannot disagree with them because all of the ideas that this government has were my ideas too.
Thank you. It's a very inspiring speech. I really was inspired by your thoughts and the program, Nation Branding. One question I have is what the challenges you have in your program, Nation Branding program, and especially with the competition you have from Brazil and Mexico. Thank you.
I think that our competitors is not Brazil. I think our competitor is this capitalistic system that we have now. For example, if we want to defend life, we cannot allow the transnational companies to make patent of the life, make patent of the DNA, make patent of the medication that the poor people needs. We have money, and I have said that in this same place. In this forum, I have said this. We have that money. You know what that money is? To make that research and to have health for everyone, because it's the right of everyone in this world. You know what that money is? That money is in the world budgets. In the world budgets. The budget of United Nations is no more than $29 billion. The budget of the World Health Organization is no more than $15 billion. You know what the budget of the armaments in the world is? You know what is it? What it is? How much? What is the amount? It's close to $1.5 trillion. $1 trillion. That's what the money is. Who is raising their voice? I'm going to fight to compete with Brazil. Brazilian poor people are my brothers. I have to unite with them to fight against the enemies of the people. Where the money is there in the armaments. They are killing people. They are killing innocent people. They play the wars with the money, with the wealth of the world. That's what we have to do, to unite against those enemies.